Hello and welcome to After Scientology, Straight Up and Vertical, the weekly show where Tony Ortega and I get together to go over Scientology news and events from the last week, as reported on Tony's Substack. Hey, Tony, welcome back.
Hey, Chris, it's been a good week.
Yeah, wild stuff. Let's go ahead and go through some things here. First off, we'll start with the bad news. Mark Bunker lost his position on Clearwater City Council. What's the story here?
Well, I remember when Mark moved back to Clearwater. When I first, started to, hear about him, he was in San Diego. He came out to Clearwater to be part of the Lisa McPherson Trust around, the year 2000 or so.
Yeah.
He had gone back to California, and then he came back to Clearwater like, I should look it up. I don't know, 2015, 16, I don't know, somewhere in there. And I was surprised. It's like, I don't know what's there for him, but I guess he wanted to be just closer to the action. And then he gets himself elected to city council. I mean, it's an amazing story. That happened in 2020. In March 2020, he was in a five-way race. He was very open about the fact that he was there to try to fight Scientology for the church, for the city of Clearwater. He got 6,000 votes, which was not a majority, but it was a plurality. It was the most anybody of those five got. That pissed off some of the establishment so much that this outsider, this nobody, would come into town and win that election. They have now changed the law. It was just passed this last election that you now have to have a majority to become a city council member. So if you don't, in the first round, they're going to have runoffs, which is just insane that they want to spend the money for extra elections. And it's just a legacy of the establishment being unhappy that Mark Bunker got a position. Okay, so that's the background. This time, he was in a three-way race, and he got 8,000 votes. He got 2,000 more than he did last time. And I think, the people there realize he's been doing a very good job, not just keeping vigilant on Scientology, but also, he's been working on some street improvements and a new city hall and, of course, all this development down there to make the place a better place downtown. The guy's been doing a good job. And that's reflected the fact he got 8,000 votes. However, one of the people he was running against, even though this is a nonpartisan race, right? When you run for city council, it doesn't say Democrat or Republican on there. You might be a Democrat or Republican, but that's not how they run a city council race. It's nonpartisan. But one of the guys he was running up against is this firefighter who's very well known as a Republican, and he got the endorsement of Republican officials.
Mm-hmm.
The local congresswoman endorsed him. So for Republicans going to the polls, they would see, okay, they don't have those DNR next to their names, but we know this guy, we know he's a Republican.
Right.
Why that mattered was that this was also a primary for the Republican Party. And so even though that's all been decided, there were people who turned out because they wanted to vote for Trump. They wanted to vote for President Trump. And so that had a large Republican turnout. And you can see it in the other races where the Republican candidate dominated. Like it was like 60-30 or 70-20 or something like that. Just really, the Republicans swamped the other races. But Bunker was so popular, he still almost, he only fell short by about 600 votes. So I think it was the popularity of Mark Bunker versus this sort of natural advantage the other guy had because there was a large Republican turnout. So Clearwater loses this city councilman who was going to keep a vigilant eye on David Miscavige. That's got to make Miscavige happy. I've been asked now, what's the possible results? Well, right now, Scientology wants to do a land swap with the city. David Miscavige still covets this little lot by the Fort Harrison Hotel. And Mark was saying, okay, he's promising if we give him that lot, what he's going to do in return is pay to refurbish the street fronts on Cleveland Street. It'll make the city look better, more inviting. Okay, it seems like not a bad swap, except Mark said the point is we have to make it certain that Dave goes first. Make Dave get the work done and then give him the land. Because if you just give him the land, there's no guarantee he's going to do anything. That's the kind of thing a Mark Bunker will do. He'll stay on it. He'd stay focused on it. Now, with him gone, I don't know that the city's going to be vigilant at all. So it's really a shame that they lost him. I think he did an amazing job in 4 years. I'm so proud of him. Like I said, when he first moved there, I was thinking, gosh, guy, you don't have a lot of connections there. Are you going to really be able to build a new life? Wow, did he ever? I mean, what a star.
Yeah. Oh, Mark has always shined all the way back to the Lisa McPherson Trust days. He has been a staunch vigilant. That is a word I think of when I think of Mark Bunker. He's a vigilant man. That guy is reliable and so kind. They really did lose more than they know. And thank you for all that analysis, because I was honestly myself in a little bit of a mystery as to what happened. So that fills in a lot of blanks for me. I'll contribute to this that right now, without any question whatsoever, the OSA staff in Clearwater are very busy right now, probably at OSA Int as well, doing what's called an assessment. And this is actually a confidential process in the Office of Special Affairs. I only happen to know about it because somebody dropped it accidentally when I was on the RPF. I wasn't ever supposed to hear about this. But it's similar to their evaluations. They find out, what are we supposed to do about the situation now? How do we proceed? Now that there's a new city council without Mark Bunker and with a Republican, let's remember, a ton of Scientologists lean heavily Republican. So they're now looking at this guy as a serious potential ally, no question about it. So how do we ally him? What are his likes? What are his dislikes? What are his fears? What are his loves? Those are 4 questions they're finding the answers to right now.
Oh, he said in the campaign that he's willing to work with Scientology.
There you go.
So they've got a friend on the city council now.
There you go. That's exactly.
It's worse than just losing the vigilance of Mark Bunker. Now you've got somebody that's friendly to the church. So it's not great for those citizens of Clearwater who were hoping that the government would finally stand up to this bully.
Yeah, that's a shame. That's a real shame. All right. Well, let's just see what happens as we move forward. It's not like Mark Bunker is disappearing off the face of the earth. He's still an influential figure. Let's see what he does. Now, arbitration arguments moving forward with the Jane Doe, one of the Jane Doe lawsuits. What's happening this?
Right. So this week there was going to be a hearing, and we're always nervous about this because Scientology has this track record of convincing judges that all Scientologists, whenever you get any kind of service, I don't want people to be confused. This has nothing to do with the billion-year contract. This has to do with the little things you sign every time you take the Purif, every time you do the student hat, whatever. Any service you do in Scientology, you have to sign this waiver that includes an arbitration clause. So then later, when you come out and decide you want to sue Scientology, they come to court and say, oh, no, they signed a contract. They signed a contract promising not to sue us in court, and if they have a problem, they have to bring it to our internal religious arbitration. That argument has worked to derail 4 lawsuits now. One of them got restored, but 4 times now, judges have decided, yeah, contract is a contract. So that's coming up now in the Jane Doe 1 lawsuit, the forced marriage lawsuit, that was scheduled for this coming week. But just recently, a couple days ago, the judge decided to move it back to April 16th. But then there was another interesting development. Today, you're putting this out on Monday. Today, on Monday, there's going to be an ex parte hearing, an emergency hearing, that the Jane Doe's team is saying that she was talking to somebody last week who said they had personal information about her situation and that they are now willing to sign an affidavit about it. So there's this new key secret witness that Jane Doe's team wants the judge to include before the April 16th showdown on all of this. So I'm sure Scientology would be really unhappy that Jane Doe's team is coming in this week and saying, we have a new witness, we have a new affidavit. They're going to argue, no, it's too late. No, you can't do this. So that'll be interesting to see if the judge allows that affidavit. Will it be enough to win the day for her on April 16th? I don't know. I mean, what I was reporting this past week was just what Scientology had argued. Jane Doe's team is saying, there was this law passed 2 years ago by Congress, signed by Joe Biden, that makes it illegal to force people into arbitration over sexual harassment cases.
Yep.
And so Jane Doe's team is saying, see, Congress doesn't want this kind of case forced into arbitration. That shouldn't work here. Scientology saying no. Her allegations are from the 1990s. That new law doesn't apply. So, various arguments. Again, what it comes down to is Jane Doe's team is saying the thing she was asked to sign was unconscionable. The idea of forcing a sexual rape victim into arbitration is abhorrent. The Scientology side is sticking with the argument that has worked with judges, which is simply a contract is a contract. And Chris, we've watched this time and time again. It's just so infuriating to see these judges buy that because, again, real quick, in independent arbitration, yes, you're signing these things all the time. When you have a roofer come over and do your roof, or you have your dentist work on your teeth, you often sign a waiver and in a little print that says if there's a dispute, don't sue us, go to arbitration. They want to keep it private. But at least in that case, it's an independent arbitrator who hears both sides, and you're as likely to win there as you would be in court. But in Scientology's case, they're forcing you into their version of arbitration, which requires a panel of Scientologists in good standing to hear the case. It's a kangaroo court. It's stacked against the person suing. So it's just a shame that these judges don't understand that, and they just look at the law and say, well, the law says if you sign that, you have to go to arbitration. And it's like, yeah, but the arbitration is completely unfair. Anyway, we'll see. It's been moved back. We're going to have to wait till April 16th, but this week we'll find out if they're going to allow in this new witness.
Yes, and I am more than a little curious about what that is all about. I think we all are. So we're looking forward to finding out what are they going to say? So hopefully that will occur. And this says just one other comment on this, just as an observation or whatever. I think I've already in weeks past said everything I possibly can about how frustrating it is to watch judges have the wool pull over their eyes about this. But it also highlights the procedural side of the law, the practice of it, that it's all about procedure and rules and process, not morality or what's the right thing to do here. And that, when that clashes, it's so frustrating because that's the courts are not moral foundations, you could say. Anyway, very frustrating. Now, at this midweek, I was like, what happened now? Ace Grinstead, blacklisting of Tony. What's going on here? What was this all about?
Well, Alex Barnes Ross has been causing quite a stir over there ever since his protest at the IAS event in November. One of the things that we were interested in was to see this mayor of East Grinstead, Fraser Visser, so involved, so gung-ho, up on stage, obviously enjoying himself. And so Alex and some other people over there started asking questions about that. Why does the East Grinstead Town Council seem so involved with Scientology when actually the population of Scientologists in East Grinstead is minuscule? It's like less than 1%. It's like 1/10 of 1% or something. But these counselors seem so solicitous of Scientology. So he started submitting records requests for things, and then there was this January town council meeting, and I had, Alex had told me if you request a link, they'll let you watch it. You don't have to be in England. So I did. I politely emailed the town council, said, "Can I please have a link so I could watch?" And they said, "Sure, here you go." And so I watched this city council or town council meeting in January 29th, and 4 people in the question and answer period to begin stood up and said, "Hey, I don't understand why you're endorsing this group. Let me tell you about how badly they abused me." I mean, there was a woman that was talking about her abuse for the first time in public. It was really moving. And each time Mayor Visser just shut it down and said, "This is not the forum." I mean, I wouldn't expect him to do much different, to tell you the truth. I wasn't outraged by his behavior. I thought it was kind of typical. But then what surprised us was when they posted the video of the meeting, they had cut off the questions and answers.
Right.
What's going on? And then after that, when they posted a description of the meeting, they didn't mention the questions and answers at all. This, and Alex was explaining to me that this is against the law in England.
Yeah.
So he then submitted a request for them to explain what had gone on. So it was these requests. We were both hearing that the council was in an uproar over it, that behind the scenes, not all the councilors agreed with each other about what was going on. And so I decided, okay, I'm gonna do a journalist thing and make a request of my own for emails about Alex. I figured that there might be something interesting that they're talking about him in emails to each other, which are public. So I had to wait a while, but they finally sent me this amazing email from the council leader, a woman named Helen Farron, I believe her name is, to the other counselors. And Chris, I mean, it's just like, oh, I know this has been so trying, and I hope your mental health is okay. It's like, as Alex points out, what about the mental health of the victims of Scientology, And but it was surprising, the letter they sent me saying, okay, this meets your request. This is what we have to turn over to you by law. And by the way, don't ask for anything else. And they claimed that my questions were designed to disrupt the council. And, again, in 28 years of reporting on Scientology, I've only had 2 contacts with the East Grinstead Town Council in my life. One in January, where I asked for a link to their meeting, and 2, when I sent in this request for an email and they sent it to me. But they have now declared me a vexatious bully or whatever, like Alex, and I just thought that was, so I played it up, banned in East Grinstead. I mean, I was having a little fun, but it suggests that, they claim they're not in league with Scientology, but maybe the best evidence that there's way too much influence of Scientology on that council is the way they're reacting to these simple questions being asked, Chris.
Exactly. This is so typical of caught in the headlights behavior and trying to shut it down, trying to live in some kind of denial about it. Oh, we're so aflutter. This at this level, even if city count, town council, this, like, I mean, come on, what are you guys sitting on that we don't know? Because this is Scientology we're talking about. If it was a Better Business Bureau, if it was some company or corporation or something, you might have plausible deniability. This is Scientology, and they've been there for decades. Do not even try to tell me that they do not have influence on that council.
Right.
Come on. This is the nature of the beast. So if it's time to come clean, just come clean. You guys are just dragging it out. That's all that's going on right now. And Alex isn't going to stop. No. And the more attention that keeps being put on this, because you're not somebody who stops either, so they can declare you a vexatious whatever the hell, doesn't stop reporting from happening or exposure. It only makes it more important. So I love that this is happening. I really do. Just getting a spotlight on this stuff. Now, speaking of spotlights, this OT phenomena stuff, right? Please explain what this is all about, because
I first fell in love with OT phenomena when somebody gave me a pile of advanced magazines from the 70s, like 10 or 15 years ago or something, and I just love them. They're just wonderful. Yeah. Later, I found out that it was Jefferson Hawkins who had been editing that magazine, which is why it was so good. Mm. It was the purpose of Advanced Magazine is to convince Scientologists to stay through the tough work you got to do to get to the OT levels, because it's at the OT levels where they believe they're going to start getting superhuman powers and that kind of thing. So Advance is the carrot to keep you on that path. If you're stuck in the objectives, it doesn't seem like it's just look at the amazing stuff happening at the OTs. And in Advanced Magazine, the most popular feature was this column called OT Phenomena, where in the 70s, people put their full names on them. They would say, oh, this is an amazing thing that happened to me. And they were wild stories. I remember in the 70s and 80s, a really popular one was that, somebody would see a car accident's about to happen, and so they used their I beams to just gently push one of the cars so that they missed each other. And they would talk about, oh, I'm just so glad I'm on OT5 so I can do that. And I mean, they were wild stories. People would walk. We were walking by the cemetery and we saw a Thetan floating around. We asked them where they were, to find out where they had died. Maybe we could help them figure out where to go.
Yeah.
Just one. And that's why I started calling them ghost stories, because they were often just that. They were ghost stories. One of my favorites from the old days was the OT who claimed that she had left her body, had traveled 2 or 3 states to Illinois to where her friend was in a hospital going under surgery. And she then came into the room to help make sure it all, as a disembodied Thetan, made sure it all went well. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of thing that they were talking about back then. More recently, they've gotten a lot more tepid. People only put their initials on it, not their names. And there are things like, I went to the intersection and the light went green right then when I got there. I think it was my OT power. I was late. I was late to my appointment. I got to the building and there was an amazing parking spot right in front by the front door waiting for me. I think it was my OT power. So, the ones these days are so pedestrian. There are things like that. But I still love them. Every time we get a new issue of Advanced Magazine, I bring out the OT phenomena. We all have a good time.
Yeah.
But this time, Chris, I mean, they're getting so pathetic. They're
Oh,
just Have they forgotten what they're trying to do is convince people to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars so they can get superhuman powers? And they're doing things like, I noticed my business wasn't doing really good, so I worked a little harder and it got better. It's like,
right.
well, uh, how is that OT power? Anyway, so that's what they were this week, and of course people always still love making fun of them.
Oh, they are great. I'm really glad you sort of explained the whole backstory on that because I grew up on the 70s and 80s OT phenomena. That was those were I saw those and thought that was reality. So when we talk about kids growing up in Scientology, it's not just Hubbard stuff that makes that up. My parents talked about stuff like that. Like that's the kind of environment that we grew up in. And for years as a public staff member and Sea Org member, Advanced Magazine, when it came out that day, give it to me, right? OT phenomena.
Yeah.
What is it this time, right? And I was not alone in that as a staff member, as a Sea Org member. We did use that as Thetan fuel to keep going. And I looked at the headline, and I looked at the story this week, and I was like, you decided to work harder? Are you like, what? This is so watered down from I was, coasting past Jupiter last week. And, I mean, we're talking night and day. And it's such a statement to the change in Scientology under Miscavige over all these years and the incredible change in their watered down marketing messaging. So, when the best they got is it's science and religion together, like this is not what it used to be, and I
What
don't
else?
admit the
There's
change.
another thing about OT
Yeah.
phenomena I'm just now thinking about as I'm thinking about it. The other real characteristic of it, whether it's the tepid ones they have today or the wilder ones back in the day,
Yeah.
even when you were using your I beams to prevent a car accident, definitely part of the tale is how smug you feel because nobody knew that you did that.
Interesting. Yes.
Because none of them are interested in demonstrating anything publicly that can be tested, right? They claim it's a miracle, but oh no, read a book, join Scientology, it'll come to you too. It's
Right.
all how they, there's this false humility about it that you're this walking superhero and you're performing miracles, but it's best that people just, don't know that I'm doing that. I just now that I think about it, they all have to them.
That's a great observation. And it's actually because L. Ron Hubbard said that. He said, don't reveal it, don't talk about it, don't blow people's minds. You're just going to, well, he said, you know, you're going to ARC break them, right? You're going to like upset them and re-stimulate them and actually potentially hurt them. So don't do it. Plus, it'll blow up society and it'll be Ghostbusters all over again, right? So don't go there, right? Okay. How funny. But that's so true. Finally, and this is kind of a because it's kind of a bigger than it might seem at first. John Travolta, Elizabeth Moss, and the whole cast of characters featured at the latest March 13th L. Ron Hubbard birthday event. Yeah.
Yeah, I had kind of forgotten about. I'd been paying attention to some other things. I really didn't pay much attention to the birthday event, and then I suddenly thought, hey, there's a press release. I should go look at it. More than a week has passed, but I still haven't looked at it. I'll go look at it. And of course, they have Miscavige with his speech and all that. And they have photos of the crowd in their press release. So, well, let's see who was there. And I blew up the photos. And sure enough, and see, this is the first time they've been at Ruth Eckerd Hall since 2019. If you remember, the lockdown started literally on like Thursday, March 12th, 2020.
Mm-hmm.
And they were scheduled to be it was literally like the day before the LRH event in 2020 that the lockdown started happening and they had to cancel at the very, very last second. So they have not been at Ruth Eckerd Hall since 2019. In 2019, Travolta and Cruise were in the front row next to each other. So I'm looking to see who's there this time, and there's Travolta. I recognize him right away. And then I looked at the woman next to him. And I'm like, that's Elizabeth Moss. Now, the reason this is significant, people, is I've seen Travolta and I've seen Cruise at numerous events. Tom Cruise was just at the IAS event, flew in with his helicopter. He was pressing the flesh. There's a million pictures of him at the event. In 2019, Cruise and Travolta were at the birthday event. We've seen them at these events over the years.
Yep.
I have never seen Elizabeth Moss at an event ever. Now, maybe when she was a kid, she went with her mom, and I just wasn't paying attention then. But I've been paying pretty close attention to these events for about 15 years, and I don't remember seeing her ever.
Wow.
So I'm wondering why now. She's real pregnant too. She's real big in the picture. Her dad died just a couple of months ago, right? And Ron Moss was in David Miscavige's doghouse for about 20 years. Does that have something to do with it? I don't know, but this is a big deal because when she started doing Handmaid's Tale, every year there would be a whole new set of stories, people saying, how can she be a Scientologist and be sort of the symbol of this dystopian film, basically arguing against totalitarian organizations? Doesn't she belong to one?
Right.
And so that's been an ongoing thing for years. And there's always a question of, well, how involved is she really? And I've been quoting people like Jeff Levin that have said, listen, he saw her grow up in it. She is involved, and she probably did disconnect from her own dad in the Scientology way. So I know there's been quite a few people that have wanted to believe that she's not really all that involved. She's one of these, sort of children of Scientology who wasn't not doing much, and they want to think that she's kind of one step out of the door. But nope, front row in the center, standing and applauding David Miscavige.
Yep, there it is.
So I'm seeing a lot of big reaction on social media from people that are very disappointed to see that, and they wish it wasn't true. And also Travolta. I mean, when Kelly Preston died, there were a lot of stories about how John's on his way out. And I was like, these tabloid stories are always telling us that Travolta's leaving and Cruise is leaving. It's just not true. I don't think people really understand that Tom Cruise, John Travolta, they're true believers. They believe this stuff, Chris.
Exactly.
Scientology is the only thing that's going to save this planet. So anyway, I think it's a big deal that Travolta and Moss are in the front row. Tom wasn't there. And I know some people will say, well, maybe that's because he's leaving. But just remember, he's in England now. He made a big show at the IAS. He's not going to fly across the ocean just 5 months later to go to another event. He just did his part in November.
Exactly. He's too busy setting up that next movie in space. Yeah, I mean, yes, this is the loyalty check, right? Because you do not get to those events and you do not get in Miscavige's presence if you are not fiercely understood as fiercely loyal to Scientology and to Miscavige. Period. End of story. That's not a questionable, controversial statement. It's absolute fact.
I mean, they're up there. The other big names were Tom Cummins was there. Jason Doring was just like the two people over from Travolta. Alan and Sheila Atkinson Baker, who have given $15 million to Steve Fabos. I mean, these are the big don't. And of course, right next to Elizabeth Moss is Trish Duggan, the richest Scientologist in the world, who is underwriting a lot of what's going on. So you have to be pretty dedicated and inside the inside club to get in that front row.
Yeah, big time, big time. And when you think about not just the money, but the connections and the influence that's in that room, that's what makes Miscavige salivate even more than the money. I mean, they got money hand over fist, but look at all these people and all the people that can be reached because of these people. That's why he sits on his throne and says, we're all good. Never been better. Everything's great right now. That's his view of Scientology and what's important in it to him, as far as I can tell.
I mean, he's got to be I know he's feeling good right now. He's opened 3 orgs in 9 days. He's got the Paris org coming in a couple weeks. He's got all these wealthy donors in the front row and these big celebrities in the front row.
Yep.
And they're back. This now completes, starting with the IAS and then New Year's in LA and now LRH at Ruth Eckerd. They have now completed bringing all the big events back to their original venues after the pandemic. Yep. So from their point of view, and he was talking it up like this is a milestone. You're never going to forget this night. Now, you and I know there's plenty of indicators to suggest this is an organization in a lot of trouble.
Yep.
But at least inside that bubble, they've got reason to believe that things are back and better than ever.
That's right. That's perfectly put. And I think that's exactly where their heads are at right now, because that's where he wants them to be, right? He needs that hope factor because that's what brings in the money. And on that, we have reached the end of our stories for this week. So any previews, anything about this coming up next week?
Well, this week was going to be that big arbitration hearing, but it got moved back. So I'm not scrambling for some other things, and we'll see. But I'm still thinking about Elizabeth Moss. I'm still thinking of the implications of that. I'm asking some people because I think it's kind of a big deal, and I'm probably going to do a little follow up on that.
Excellent. I'm personally extremely curious about it because, dates and coincidences and things like that, they're not always the coincidences you might think when it comes to the world of Scientology. If he was in the doghouse and now he's gone, maybe that's the thing that needed to be out of the Moss family for Elizabeth to connect up with number one. That's how Scientology works. That's not a weird thing. And even with celebrities, we know with Leo, we know with other celebrities that, yeah, they get to break all the rules when they're producers, when they're bringing in the money and the power. But when they're on the fence or they're not that way, they can get treated just as badly as anybody else in Scientology. So, all right. Now, Tony's address for his Substack is right there on the screen. Go ahead and subscribe. Make sure you get your daily notifications. And we will see you guys next week. Bye-bye.